Dr. David Clark.
Well, Mr Chair, I rise to speak to the Immigration Amendment Bill number 2, which Labor will oppose because it doesn't significantly tackle migrant exploitation, and there are some significant issues we have with the bill. We have a concern in the Labor Party that far too many migrant workers are having their employment rights abused, and that is something we certainly see down the end of the country in which I live. In the wider Otago Southland area, there are countless tales of exploitation on dairy farms. Now, that should not tar all farmers with a brush, because there are plenty of good employers also in our region. But where there are abuses, we need to ensure we have good legislation to tackle them. Otherwise, it simply puts pressure on good employers as they seek to stay afloat, competing with bad employers. And there are, of course, isolated cases also in Dunedin itself. There were ones raised before the election where I personally was asked for comment about employment rights being abused, and the position that Labor took was that there should be appropriate fees in place. And I see here in this legislation there is a muddling of fees and taxes, of levies and taxes I should say, that has been criticised because the thinking is not clear thinking. And where we do have appropriate levies in place that pay for sufficient inspectors to ensure that the employment rights of immigrant workers are not being exploited, we'll end up with a more even and level playing field. And we of course all recognise the need to have seasonal workers, to have immigrant workers here in New Zealand to meet shortages in the labour force. And we must balance that, of course, with the need to have opportunities for New Zealand workers, many of whom are willing to work and may or may not be located in a position where they can easily. Sometimes the wages, of course, are insufficient to cover transport costs, and we find that migrant workers are willing to live in conditions that New Zealanders would not work in, and that is an issue to do with minimum wages, not unrelated to the material in this bill. But we need to, I think, in this country, create an environment where workers are able to report abuse. And this is the problem, of course, that we are trying to tackle, but which is tackled inadequately in this bill. Workers aren't going to report exploitation if they are going to risk being deported. And so we need to think carefully about how we set in place those mechanisms so that we have the principle preserved, that where there are abuses, the migrant worker can feel that they are safe to report them, so that our labour laws are strengthened, that our labour market functions in a way that is fair before the law for all parties. And the government, it has to be noted, continues to fail to employ enough labour inspectors to reduce the pressure on migrant workers to report. If we had sufficient inspectors, we would be living in a situation where we had fewer cases of exploitation. And so it seems to me logical that we need to set in place the appropriate levies, taxes, fees, however they're collected, to cover the cost of inspecting and to make sure that the exploitation is not taking place. Where there is an incentive in place to report, or sufficient oversight that the abuses don't occur in the first place, we have a functioning labour market. We have then the appropriate workers being brought in, treated fairly. We preserve our international reputation as a good place to work and to live. And these reputational effects, of course, also have wider benefits. As a country, we depend on our reputation for fairness in many, many situations, including at the international trade table. New Zealand earns its place at the trade table as a small country, often because we are seen as a straight talker, as someone who will not align themselves with other countries' interests just for the sake of it, but will take a principled position. And that is based on our reputation for fairness, and of course that can be undermined by poor legislation that doesn't seek to ensure that immigrant workers, Mr Chair,
Dr David Clark,
that doesn't seek to ensure that immigrant workers are protected appropriately. In the bill itself, as I said, there's a mix of levies, fees, and the Legislation Advisory Committee regarded the bill and proposed that there should be greater specificity to show that what is being proposed is not simply an unwarranted tax, and to ensure migrants will not be made responsible for the government's failure to ensure to properly fund the Immigration Advisors Authority. So there's some muddled thinking in the bill, and it's clear that that needs to be picked up and addressed. And I'd be interested in what the Minister and the Chair has to say about that recommendation, as I'm sure that he is across these issues, a former FEC chair, one whose nomination I thoroughly supported, and I'm sure he will have some words of wisdom about the Legislation Advisory Committee's recommendations. I see Mr Goldsmith nodding, so I'll look forward to his contribution soon. He is someone who does have something to say in debates that's worthwhile from time to time, and this may well be one of those occasions. My colleague comments like Haley's comment, but I will come back to the matter at hand. In the Select Committee, 18 people submitted on the bill, and a number of changes were recommended. Unfortunately, we are not in a position to support the SOPs that are being put forward. We do not think that they really address the issues that have been brought forward through the submissions process, and we don't think that they get to the heart of unpicking the problems that sit in the bill. So we will still not be able to support the bill, even if the SOPs were adopted by this Parliament. So I want to finish my contribution where I started off by encouraging the Minister to indeed address those issues. Maybe he's got some other ideas as to how we can solve the muddle that is in the bill. I would like to see the government significantly tackle migrant exploitation in a way that's meaningful, that preserves our international reputation for fairness, fair treatment of workers, because we depend on that reputation in the international trade sphere. We depend on and trade on our reputation for fairness in many areas in world affairs. And ultimately it's about fairness, and New Zealanders have a real sense that fairness must be preserved. That's also true for our New Zealand workers, to make sure there's a fair marketplace, that exploited migrant workers aren't undercutting the opportunities effectively for New Zealand workers also. So we won't be supporting the bill as it stands, and I do very much look forward to Minister Goldsmith's contribution to the debate. He is someone who occasionally sheds useful light on an issue.
Members, we come to the vote. We're on part 1. We have the Minister's typescript amendments to clauses 5 and 47. The question is that the amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in support.
No. In favour.
In favour, sorry.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
11 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Could I just ask Labour to cast the vote again, please? What was your numbers?
32 votes opposed. Sorry, going back in time.
Thank you. Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 58. The amendments are agreed to. We next have the Minister's amendments to Part 1 as set out on SOP number 65 as amended. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
11 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 58. The amendments are agreed to. We move to Part 1 as amended, stand part. The question is a Part 1 as amended, stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. So, party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
11 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 58. Part 1 as amended will stand part. We now move to Part 2, and we have the Minister's typescript amendments to Clause 61 and Clause 80. Question is that the amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
11 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 58. The amendments are agreed to. We have the Minister's amendments to Part 2 as set out on SOP number 65 as amended. The question is that the amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
11 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 58. The amendments are agreed to. Members, the question is that Part 2 is amended, stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. So, party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
11 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
The ayes are 61, the noes are 58. Part 2 is amended, will stand part. Members, we now move to the clauses. The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. So, party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
11 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 58. Clause 1 will stand part. We now move to Clause 2. First, we have the Minister's amendments. The question is that the Minister's amendment be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
11 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 58. The amendment is agreed to. So the question now is that clause 2 is amended. Stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
11 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 61, the noes are 58. Clause 2 is amended, will stand part. Members, we come to clause 3 and the question is a clause 3 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
11 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 58. Clause 3 will stand part. Members, I will report this bill with amendment presently. Members, we now turn to the Animal Welfare Bill and Joe